One of the things that happened today in Michael Cohen's testimony is that he described the circumstances under which he made a recording of himself speaking to his boss, speaking to Donald Trump. It was a recording of an in-person meeting. He walked into Trump's office with the voice notes app on his phone recording while he either held his phone or had it in his pocket or near his pocket. The reason he said he made the recording is because David Pecker from American media expected to be paid back $150,000 that American media had advanced to a woman named Karen McDougal, who had claimed that she had had a long affair with Donald Trump. AMI, as part of its alleged scheme with Donald Trump to suppress negative information about him in order to benefit his campaign, had paid McDougal ostensibly to do some work for their magazine empire, but really so that they would own the life rights to that story about Donald Trump and make sure that that story never saw the light of day. Now, at some point after AMI had advanced that money, Cohen and Trump, according to Cohen, decided that they would purchase those rights from AMI. They would effectively reimburse AMI for having made that outlay of cash. But in so doing, they would buy those life rights themselves. And for a while, they talked about including in that purchase price the treasure chest of information that American media had accumulated over time about the life and loves of Donald Trump. A locked drawer reportedly full of information about Trump. They thought for their $150,000, they could get the Karen McDougal rights. They could get all the Trump stuff. They were worried to get that information because Cohen testified today that David Pecker, the head of this magazine empire, they believed was going to get a different job at Time Incorporated. He was going to leave. That would mean David Pecker, their friend and protector, the member of this conspiracy with them, was going to leave behind at AMI all of that information about Trump in that locked door. Wouldn't that in that locked drawer? Wouldn't that be terrible? Somebody else might get it. Wouldn't it be better if we owned that ourselves? So here's Michael Cohen and Donald Trump in a recording that Cohen made without Trump knowing in a meeting in Trump's office.
I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with
So what are we going to pay?
Funding. Yes. And it's all the stuff. All the stuff, because you never know where that company, you never know where he's going to be. Correct. So I'm all over that. And I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be.
Listen, what financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
I'll pay the kid.
No. I got no.
Check.
No, not cash. Check. Why a check? Let's bring into the conversation our colleague Lisa Rubin, who is at the courthouse today. Also, Catherine Christian, former assistant district attorney at the Manhattan DA's office. Thank you, Ms. Christian, for being with us. Lisa, let me ask you, first of all, if I characterized the context of that recording correctly.
Yeah.
And when they say Pecker might get hit by a truck, what they mean is Pecker might no longer be the custodian of what we believe is negative information about Trump, so we should own that ourselves?
Correct.
Okay. Why does, or is it clear to you why it matters that Trump is suggesting making this payment in cash, even though Cohen argues against that?
Well, for starters, Trump doesn't want a record of it. The exact same reasons that Cohen is saying, let's cut a check because I want to protect Trump with a record, is the very same reason that Donald Trump is begging him to use cash, because he wants no one to know about it at all. But I think the larger import of the tape is not about the cash or check. It's about situating Donald Trump at the center of this scheme and showing that not only did he join the conspiracy, but that he was involved in each and every plan to execute on that conspiracy by repaying for Karen McDougal's settlement on one hand, and then later on paying Stormy Daniels himself.
When you talk about paying for something in a way that is untraceable, or communicating about something in a way that is untraceable, is that to a jury or to a court of law? Is that potentially evidence of knowledge of criminality?
I think it is. But again, let's remember that here, what the actual crime that's being alleged here is falsification of business records. And so this tape doesn't necessarily move the needle about the falsification and Donald Trump's own knowledge and involvement in that. On the other hand, it shows his motive to be involved in that cover-up because he was directly involved in the crime itself.
Right. Okay. So it's not that this goes to a larger point that we've been talking about tonight, all of us, which is that there is no viable, if the prosecution is doing its job, there is no viable counter narrative that Michael Cohen was acting alone, that Trump had no idea any of this was happening. Rather, the prosecution is presenting a picture of Michael Cohen's actions as situated in and connected to and integral with Trump's own actions. Right, Catherine?
Yeah, and it also goes to intent. And the judge is going to instruct the jury that the definition of intent, it was the defendant's conscious objective to cause a result. So motive, intent, consciousness of guilt. What gets me about this relationship, it wasn't an attorney-client relationship. It was a master-servant, no offense to Mr. Cohen. So, of course, these weren't legal expenses because this was not really an attorney. I mean, the prosecution will probably not argue that, but this really was not an attorney-client relationship.
I don't know. Again, we keep coming back to this idea that you don't, the burden of proof correctly and constitutionally is on the prosecution. I just feel like, and again, maybe I'm thinking of this in a way that's not the median juror because I'm exposed in a different way to it. But I do need something to hang on to that's an alternate story for all this stuff. I mean, you could raise doubts about it, but I mean, like...
In order to empathize with the defense?
In order to think that it wasn't exactly what it looks like. Yeah. I mean, I guess I just sort of feel like, okay, let's say you gave me some theory that Cohen went rogue. This was cooked up by Weisselberg and Cohen. Like, maybe that seems plausible, and they wanted to do it for the boss, but then, like, I need something about why Trump writes him the checks, right? Like, I
can give it to you.
Okay.
But it's not very strong.
Go ahead.
If you admit the misdemeanor, business fraud, it's on paper.
There's no question.
CFO, you lied. Yeah. But you say, when Cohen did all this and the defendant's sitting in the White House, he then felt like paying him back, so it's partly the rogue, but it's all after the fact. If you move the decision, which is still bad, later, after the fact, you might, and tell us what you think, help raise doubt against whether it was contemporaneously consciousness intent at the time before Election Day. Which means, again, I'm not here doing free legal services. They already have their plan, which means you admit the misdemeanor, which is a common defense tactic when you have a bad case. Then you post-date the other action, and that allows for the fact that it could be true that you reimbursed him.
And will Donald Trump allow his defense attorneys to say, Your Honor, we want you to instruct the jury on the lesser included offense of falsifying business records in the second degree?
Don't you think that would be in New York court?
That would be.
Will he allow his lawyers to essentially plead guilty to the misdemeanor?
Well, not plead guilty. You're admitting it, basically. And then he would be, again, assuming the jury says, you know what, we don't think it's, the higher. We don't know where the intent to conceal another crime is, but he did intend to defraud.
But don't you
and then
think
there's 34 misdemeanor convictions as opposed to felony.
But don't you think if you have a defendant who's not consumed by ego, that's a better
instruction? That's the advice I would give my client. The client can say, hooey.
Right.
If this had been me, I would have pled guilty day one. And it would all be over by now.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Our recap of the action today in the Trump criminal trial continues. To be clear, I didn't do it.